Good morning. So it's bright and early. The sun is bright and hard to see. I wanted to show you the mountains here. So right now I'm in what's called Haines Junction. Haines Junction is that place in between where you have a choice of going forward and head to the coast and ends up in Haines, Alaska, or you go right and you end up in the interior. But it's still in Yukon Territory, which is a territory of Canada. So we haven't yet crossed back over to the US border. So what I wanted to do is talk about in the series, is talk about being psychic and grounding and communication and communication with yourself specifically. So communication with yourself is something that is really important and sometimes really difficult. It's a place of knowing what it is that you as a spirit want, you as a being want, and how do you communicate with the world around you. And a big part of it has to do with being aware of what it is that you want. And some of that happens through grounding. I feel compelled to tell you a little bit more about myself, what I'm about, and what some of this information that I come to you with is about. So I am spiritual in as much as I have an incredible appreciation for the divine or for that which is all around us. So we're surrounded by beauty. You know, just here, if I turn the camera, turn the phone around, I'm on my iPhone, and give you an idea of the mountains in the background. I mean, they're just magnificent, don't you think? And, you know, maybe it's all random acts of existence. I don't know. You know, on this one side, this is amazing beauty, and on the other is the Alaska Highway, which has the big old trucks going by, so you hear those in the background. And as soon as they go by, you start to hear the birds again. So, you know, what is it? When I look at it energetically and I see God, when I'm in a trance and I've got my eyes closed, I absolutely see the divine. You know, not God in the biblical sense or the human concept of a guy sitting on a throne with a beard, you know, with the goats on his left and the sheep on his right. You know, not that. But this presence, I don't know, the way that it, I mean, I do know, the way that it feels to me is kind of like we are cells in the body of this divine presence, and that we are living to be the physical expression of this divine, that it can do everything but be physical, and so we are here in order to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's fate. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have no choice. It doesn't necessarily mean that we create every moment, but maybe we do. And that's the other aspect of it that I look at and work with all the time. There's a belief out there that says that we actually create every single moment of our lives, even the stuff that seems really hard. So we can have contrast. If we create what we don't want, then we know that what we do want. If we are creating lives of great frustration, you know, the concept is that if we live our lives, if I'm living a life right now that I don't want, then I've created it in the last 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 weeks with my thoughts, is this whole thought, the whole idea. And so what are my thoughts and how are my thoughts creating? There's an entire concept, an entire belief system that says that I am creating my world with my thoughts, and I have to pay constant attention to my thoughts. I have to be aware of them so that I can create the life that I want instead of the life that I don't want. And that can be a real challenge because it's so easy to get caught up in the negative of the world. As I'm sitting here, I've got the birds behind me and I've got these mountains behind me, and at the same time I've got the cars, and I could focus on the cars, but then I get more cars and I get more destruction. If I focus on destruction, I see more destruction. If I'm looking at a glacier, I can see it for its incredible beauty, or I can see it for its incredible destructive force that it is, and call that destructive force bad. And if I'm doing that, then I'm creating more of that. either I'm creating it or I'm aware more of it. I don't know for sure. But if I'm creating and thinking and focused on the bad things and how bad my life is, then I'm going to create more of it, or I'm going to be aware of more of that. It'll be harder and harder and harder to see any of the good if what I'm doing is creating, if I'm just simply creating bad, if I'm thinking about bad. So there's a way psychically to work on this. I don't see psychicness, so to speak, I don't see it as a spiritual thing, although it is spiritual in as much as it's working with the spirit. But I see them as tools. I see them as tools like a comb. You know, I've got this naturally curly hair that does different things. And so if I took a comb to it, then I would have a different experience with my hair. You know, I went to bed with my hair wet, so it's really, really big today. So I have a tool called a comb that has a different experience to my hair when I apply the comb. And depending on how I apply it, that my experience with my hair will be different. And that's how I see psychic tools. Psychic tools are a way to have a different experience with my life. And so I ground, I say hello to the earth, and I run the earth energy through my body and the sky energy, the cosmic energy through my body. I call in my energy back from wherever I've left it. And then I start to create what I want my life to look like. So maybe I want more clients, you know. Part of the reason I do this work is so I can show other people how to live their lives, and I get paid to do that. So let's say I want more clients, and so I say hello. I sit here and I literally send out hellos to 1,000 people and say, hey, I'm here, find me. My name will be on your lips. You will find me, and we will do work together. Or, I want to see $1,000 in my bank account, $1,000 extra dollars. I want that to happen. And so something might happen, and maybe I can't control the individual thing, but something will happen for that extra money to come along that I didn't expect to come. So there's this amazing way of creating and paving your life with your brain. It doesn't only take the thoughts, it also takes the action. So as we sit here and we ground the body and allow the energy that doesn't belong to us to come out of the body, and then as we allow the earth and the sky, the cosmic energy to come through the body, out through the top of the head, then I come to the center of my head. There's this space. It's a psychic tool. The way that you see it represented is with a bindi, which the Indian folks wear. Though they wear it here, there's some folks wear it as this is the terminus point of the Kundalini energy, which runs up from the base of the spine, comes up through the spine, and comes out the top. But there's this place called the center of the head, which is just, it's exactly that. It's right behind the third eye, right between the temples. And it's a room or a space that you can go and you can inhabit this place. There's all kinds of different groups that use this as a form of meditation. They use it as a place to go. And you can create this room to be anything you want to. Maybe you want to create it as a horse farm. Maybe you want to be on the beach. Maybe you want a room. For the longest time I had a room that had an aquarium as the floor, so I can watch the fish, and as the walls, so I can be around the fish all the time. It changes. You go to that space. And this is what I do when I'm doing readings. When you all come to me for readings, I ground my body and I come to this space. And then out in front of me, I see a screen. It's not really a screen because it's not like a movie screen, although some people see it that way. It's just a space right out about 18 inches in front of me where I see the stuff that isn't physically there. And so I look out there and I see. And if I'm reading somebody, I guess the people who are in the room right now, I can see one of you is particularly heartsick. And your heart is just breaking right now. And you're wanting to have clarity and love in that. And there's another one of you who are very joyful. And I can see that joy. And there's another one of you who's really confused about what it is that you're creating in your life. And I can see that confusion. And the way I see it is I see it as bubbles almost. It comes apart. I see it as these energy bubbles. And sometimes they'll have the word confusion written on them, and sometimes they're a color, and I interpret the color. So the confusion, for instance, is a dark gray and brown kind of mixture. And I see these different things. So I see, right now I'm looking at other people, but I don't always want to look at other people. I want to look at myself. And so I take little tiny firecrackers and I blow up all those images. And I put an image of myself up there, and I say, what am I creating? And I see that right now, this morning as I woke up, things are actually pretty good in my space. I'm well grounded, I'm in my body. And I can see that I am working on some frustration and some confusion with my psychic ability. That I want it to be stronger than it is. I want to be able to find things. For instance, if I lose my keys, or if somebody else does, I want to be able to see that and see what that looks like. And so what I do is I create a color for that. So light blue is the color that I see would work with that. And so I take light blue, the color of light blue, and I put it in the bubble above my head. And then I bring that light blue down into my body so that I can start being better with my psychic ability about being able to find things. You would think if I were psychic, I'd be able to find things, right? And I want that as a skill, especially animals and people. And so I've just brought that down into me, and we'll see how it goes. If over the next few days I haven't improved my skill to find things, then I'll know that I need to do it differently. Because what I'm experiencing today in my life is what I have created the last day, week, hours. Now there's some things, so to give you more information about my life, part of the reason I got into the psychic work is because I couldn't understand with my sister what was going on. I mentioned that my eldest sister had brain cancer, and I was her caretaker, and I was feeling all of her pain in my physical body, and I couldn't understand how to handle that. And so what I did was I took a psychic class and learned some tools. But I come from a background of being a complete devout Christian to a complete atheist to a pagan, where I did spells and witchcraft, to a complete atheist again. So my realm of connection with spirit has always been there, in as much as I've always wanted it. But I have been everything from an absolute atheist to an absolute devout person of different types. And as I was going through my life, I'm 51 now, and as I was going through my life and trying to figure stuff out, I kept getting disappointed in God. And I'm sure there are those of you who have had that experience. And my first huge disappointment was when I was 6 years old, and my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer. And she was also had a depression disorder, and so she would be in her bed a lot. And I thought that somehow this was my responsibility. And part of why I thought that is because when I went to the priest, and when I went to later on the minister in the Baptist church that my caretaker took me to, I was told, quoted Revelations, asking ye shall be given. And I asked, don't take my mom. And of course she died. And somehow I felt like that was my fault and my responsibility. And on the grandest scale, on an energetic level, from a spirit level, I created this life, or I was born into this life to have these experiences. But it's not my fault that my mother died. It's not my fault that a friend of mine lost a bunch of baby chickens. It's not my fault that these chickens died. It's not my fault that bad things happen. So when you're talking about you're creating your life, and you're creating your life the way you want it to be, sometimes people die and people get sick, and it's because that's what their creation is, because their creation, their life, at the same time you're creating your life, and people want to have experiences. And so as you work on this, and you start working on this concept of paying attention to your life and realizing that you have an ability to change your life with your thoughts and with your grounding cord and with what goes on in your head, what you see on the screen, you can't control other people. And you can't control if somebody loves you or if they don't love you. And if you ever go to a psychic and say, does my boyfriend or girlfriend love me? Ask them. If you're going to a psychic to ask if somebody loves you, then maybe it's not the right relationship if you can't go to them and ask them and believe them. We can't control other people. We can't control our children and how they interact with us. All we can do is control ourselves. And it's one of the hardest things in the world because me, I'm a Sagittarian. I want to control everything and everyone all of the time. And I have to learn that it's okay not to. And it's okay to not want to. And it's okay to just pay attention to my life. And to be right here and right now. Grounded. So the last thing I was going to talk to you about today is the idea about being right here and right now. In the moment. In a state of peace. Regardless of what's going on around you. I was in bed, laying in bed this morning before I got up. And cuddling and having just a really sweet time, but my head was so busy. And I suddenly had this realization that it felt as though my mind was trying to get something done. Have you ever had that experience where you lay there and for all intents and purposes, everything should be really calm and quiet around you, including your head, and the head is just going. It's almost as though I have a minute of stillness, and so the head wants to get something done. And in that moment, how I handle that moment is how I'm going to create the rest of my day. Is the rest of the day going to feel frantic? Is the rest of the day going to feel ungrounded? Well, right there in that very moment, I needed to still those thoughts, and I did it with a grounding cord. And I thanked them. Thank you, thoughts. And then I said, you know what? There's nothing that you need to think about right now that can't be thought about later. So let's just have this moment of a quiet head. So I had that conversation with my head, and then I had about 5 more minutes of a quiet head, and it was really quite delightful. So it is absolutely okay to be right here and right now, without worrying about anything, having a moment of just being still, just for a moment, giving that to yourself, just for 10 seconds of being aware of how amazing it is just that you're breathing. It's all right. So that's how I work psychically. See those stuff out in front of me. See what's going on with the world. And I help folks by having that information come to me so that I can share it with them verbally. And you can do the same thing. It's all right there at your fingertips. So leave me comments about what it is you want me to communicate to you about, or send me chats. And I will see you next time. Bye.